Sure. All the rest of the crew are up and ready to start, but you, lazy bones. You gave me a real run for my money there. Thought you'd never come out of your room. Well, come on. What are you waiting for, Bandersnatch? Get up and get to it. We've got some work to do.
It's Bander. It's just Bander. In this episode, our story begins with one vampire, a manic alchemist with an obsession for conducting diabolical experiments on creatures and concoctions alike. A desire to bring such experiments to the world under its own vision. That vampire's name is Jess. Even though it is short, it appears about 27 years of age. Jess enjoys wearing black and white clothing with mismatched patterns. Generally, the style is that of a circus ringmaster or a jester. Surprisingly, most of its clothes fit well on its itty build. Seems it would be tall, thin, and imposing if it were tall. Alas, 'tis just a scrungly little thing. Jess's pronouns are, what's that, can I eat it, creature, and it, though it will settle with they and them. Jess is the type to throw etiquette out the window in favour of its own progress and jokes. Only when it suits Jess does Jess follow more proper etiquette, if one can call it that. Eating the glass along with the drink may not be considered such. As far as motivation goes, Jess seems entirely obsessed with getting samples, mostly of blood, for some kind of research. Before the days of the now well-established Circus Macabre, Jess would roam the lands on its own, constructing new camps around Valorant's countless forests and caves, searching for new subjects to extract samples from. As its journey lengthened, the obsession with mixing a new this and that would burn deeper into its mind, driving the innovation of groundbreaking methods and inventions just to keep up with the pace of such experiments. However, all the while, Jess maintained a very simple ritual before each test, an offering to the creatures of the forest, be it wolves, the wisps, and most importantly of all, the Fae. With Jess's experiments always having some sort of magic attached to them, and Jess itself believing it was once a Fae creature, these offerings were made out of superstition, for good luck, in the hopes to avoid the tragedies that occurred in earlier experiments of theirs. These are traits owned by a vampire, most unapproachable, someone who would typically seek comfort in their own lair, left alone, for decades with nothing more than a to-be-fixed crack in the wall to expose them to the real world. But not Jess. No, not at all. For subjects were more than just bugs and creatures lurking beneath rocks and behind bushes. After the world stopped producing enough species to outmatch Jess's progression, they turned to other animals for answers. People. Whether it was vampires or werewolves, pure-blooded humans or the undead, Jess had fallen beyond the point of no return. The glow of the person it once was, fading as the days passed. So much questionable interaction with something so similar to you would do that to a person. Jess wasn't helpless, however, far from it. Jess didn't vow to live a life of lonely degeneracy, focusing its every waking breath on its work. Jess needed a follower, needed a friend, needed a family. It was a cold night in the middle of October. Sunrise was promised in no less than a couple of hours, which meant it was time for Jess to set up camp once again. An abandoned, overgrown shed stood barely within an unkept forest a few miles away from the nearest town. The path to the structure lost long ago. Jess enters without a second thought, knowing that if anything were to attack it, they would have hell to pay. Ignorance paid off once again, as Jess searched the small space for a place to put their things. The gear clanked together from within their worn rucksack. It'll do for today. The cawing of a crow outside somehow caught the attention of Jess. Though it had been a while since their last experiment, a crow was certainly not going to be ideal for anything new. Jess stalked the bird briefly, before pouncing on it and snapping its neck. Not such a hearty dinner, but dinner nonetheless. Walking away, they felt a crunch beneath their foot. The sound of a small bone breaking, followed by the wrinkling of paper. Jess took a closer look, kneeling down at a patch of soil, disturbed not so long ago. Removing the ground's cap, it revealed a cold, husky hand clutching a note, the rest of the body, if there was one, presumed to be further down. "I'm so sorry." The words scribbled desperately on the note. A brief investigation of the hand provided important results. There was not a drop of blood left inside of this poor soul. An idea sprung to mind. A history of drawing and mixing blood leaves nothing but new species and creatures in the pot for further discovery. But if blood is added to a creature? Jess sprinted to its bag with excitement. Filing through small vials of different blood samples, it grabbed a vial of volatile creature blood, a new invention of theirs. Seemed healthy enough still, and warm. Also grabbing a large syringe, Jess launched itself back over to the hole, taking the limb by its neck and carefully inserting the blood into what could only be described as a collapsed vein. The syringe bled dry and down the husk's wrist. Jess waited and waited, but this experiment yielded no result. They stood up, capping the syringe after wiping it on their ragged shirt. The instant Jess turned their back, a slight movement could be felt beneath their feet. Jess took a few more steps back, and the motion grew restless. The once cold and stiff wrist flopped to rest on the soil. Jess's face lit up with excitement, the genius proving worthy once again. Jess fell to their hands and knees, scraping at the soil to free the person beneath. The hole was no deeper than 2 feet, and the body was uncovered in no time. The figure burst from the ground, like hot water from a geyser, blasting Jess onto their back. Before they could act, Jess was pinned down. Was it attacking? It was sobbing, Jess realized. The moment of panic diffused by an unexpected response. It grasped Jess in a closer embrace, screaming in agony? In confusion? Who could know? The adrenaline faded, and the husk, who could now be seen as a fledgling vampire, slumped back, muting their reaction. Wasting no time, Jess began interrogating the vampire. "What is your name? How did you end up in the grave? And where are you from?" The answer to all being, I don't know. A moment of silence rested on the two, as they examined each other. "I don't know, but I think my name is Annie," said the vampire, looking to Jess for confirmation. Jess smiled, laying its hand on Annie's shoulder. "Hi Annie, I'm Jess." Annie let out a faint smile. Jess stood, holding out their hand, their smile creeping further up their cheeks. "Where are you heading next, Annie?" This wasn't the first friend Jess had made. No, that was Valonia Chandra. And now, the story repeats, discovering new subjects, building new camps, logging new results. A new member of the circus joins Jess on its adventure, a vampire by the name of Ilian'Dias. Another freak like Jess, the perfect bunch for a business, the perfect cast for a circus. What better way to stay under the radar in Valonia than to create an attraction funded by every living, sentient being inside of it? Dracula would see no issue, surely. In a zone owned and policed by Societas Draconis, Jess put aside their days of living on luck and convinced the council on the benefits of running a circus. More customers, more money, more entertainment, more happiness. A show to disguise its work as oddities. A reason to begin using their inventions for something more than just bragging rights. Chaos, attraction, power. The bright lights on the horizon attract the crew's latest addition to the freak show, Bandersnatch, a wandering scarecrow. So, for the first time ever, Ringmaster Jess was pulling the veil to a new world. For everyone to see, Jess was opening the gates to the Circus Macabre. And now, the show must go on. Valonia Chandra, apparent age 31, actual age 501, appearance, a full figure with dark blue hair, streaks of green shimmer hiding inside the strands, usually dressed in a fine flowing dress. Her personality, sweet, bubbly, sultry, and social. Growing up as an only child, Valonia was spoiled by her parents. Leaving home when she turned 30, she searched to find herself and explore the world. She didn't have anywhere to go, so she found herself gambling, her game of choice being one called the 3 Ruby Cup Shuffle. It was her favourite for a reason. She was really good at it. Eventually, she was making enough to live independently where she pleased, exploring every moment and memory the world could offer her. Her life, for a year, spent on the road, living. Being turned by an elegant woman helped Valonia explore the world in exciting new ways, hearing things she couldn't hear before, seeing things through a new lens, feeling this oxygen she breathed as a new meaning to life. So much so that she ventured out to new lands and landed where she is now, part of a circus, enjoying every moment meeting new people, sharing stories, and experiencing life beyond the veil. Valonia was the first person Jess saw potential in. Since then, 50 years have passed by. Continuing in chronological order of joining the circus, we have Annie Rings, a beautiful woman with short, blonde hair, bright yellow or deep blue eyes depending on their emotions. Annie is in her late 20s, standing at 5 feet and 4 inches tall. After Jess found Annie, it's safe to assume that both of their lives were soon going to change forever. Encouragement for experiments, an extra pair of hands to fetch a new subject or swirl a vial of chemicals. This is what Annie came to be for Jess, a worshipper, engrossed in serving Jess at a wave of its hand. Touching, if it wasn't for the darker meaning behind such behaviour. We don't know much about who Annie was before Jess revived her, but this unwavering loyalty was a mechanism born from some kind of betrayal. The fear of abandonment, that feeling of being replaced. Annie was terrified, petrified that Jess would soon return her in the state it found Annie, beneath the dirt, dead and useless. Jess would leave, eager to find more subjects for its tests, and Annie would just sit patiently, wondering if Jess would ever bother to return. For the time being, Jess was returning. To avoid this feeling of paranoia, Annie began getting more involved with Jess's experiments. As I mentioned, an extra pair of hands to catch and carry oddities. Actively assisting Jess in its studies, it was Annie's passion too. To not rot in a lonely grave, but to be part of something meaningful, world-changing. She didn't quite understand everything. Luckily for her, she didn't have to. Jess had that part under control. Annie's involvement in helping with research grew deeper and deeper, just the way it happened with Jess in the beginning. Something about such work was enticing. It was exciting. Her hand raised one fateful night. "I volunteer," said Annie to Jess. But Jess wouldn't think twice, not out of absence of empathy, but from confidence in itself. Jess could do anything. Mutations and more potent vampirism were sewn into the fabric of Annie's DNA with each passing test. More and more would occur night after night. A living, healthy, powerful subject like Annie was an entirely new playing field. Testing their wonders, discovering new results, Annie became ever closer to Jess, that loyalty and obsession becoming more potent with each minute spent with them, even if it was only ever really one-sided. As the effects matured, Annie began to inhibit behaviours of a dog or wolf, sitting and walking on all fours, the mutations altering her body to comfort a form of shape-shifting. Scratches on the head and a lick of attention was all Annie craved. It was the least Jess could do for such a strong subject. Her sense of smell transformed, with her sight too, an obedient, sentient tracking hound, devoted to every command Jess would suggest. But despite everything Annie has sacrificed for Jess, her time, her body, her mind, she still had that thought, deep down. What if they never come back? A circus anomaly. Living away from the rest of the crew, this strange vampire appears and disappears on his own accord. Appearing as a man in his 30s, his unpredictable actions and behaviour have led many to believe he is older or younger, depending on how you interpret him as a whole. Ilian manages to disguise himself as a vampire who stands just over 6 foot, an impression inflicted by Ilian himself to lessen his threatening presence. His real height is estimated to be more around 6 foot and 9 inches. He covers himself in studded leathers of remarkably high quality, hiding the majority of his physique under layers of cloth and armour. His gait, or manner of walking, demonstrates his masculine lethality, however, while still hiding the fact that he is generally larger than most common folk that live in Vardaran. Ilian'Dias is considered a member of the circus cast and crew, but does not exclusively interact or brand himself as a member of the business itself. His independent lifestyle paints him more as a luxury to the circus's family, not a guarantee. He is aware of more obscure information on the other members, typically nothing crucial, but he'll definitely notice situations faster than those being immediately affected. His loyalty, like the other cast, belongs partially to Jess overall, trusting her intuition and vision. Darkness. It's still, but it's swirling. Why does the air feel fresh when I'm not even breathing? And that smell. It smells revolting! Bander kicks himself awake, like being raised from death by some divine intervention. Oxygen runs into his lungs rapidly, and his eyes beam bright and wide as he snaps his neck in panicked directions in an attempt to gain bearing. Bodies lay on the ground, rotting and plentiful, buildings taken apart like building blocks as infant embers drift to sleep in their belly. What happened? The thought echoed through Bander's mind, but his body refuses to speak it aloud. Bander goes to move, but his legs are suspended and dead. His arms, the same. The only thing moving for Bander is the motion of his slow, beating heart. The panic he feels does not translate into this motion. A memory flickers like a dying candle, forcing a deep breath down Bander's throat. His eyes roll back into his head, and the glow shuts off. From the outside, it's as if a spirit has been evicted from the scarecrow that Bander was just awake inside of. But from the inside, a struggle. Bander's arm falling to the ground as blood flows out like hell being let loose. The cackling and shouts of a group of warriors laying assaults into the helpless boy. The pain, the fear. The memory flashes again. War cries in the distance as bright torches siege the vicinity. I can't move. I can't run. The fathers burst out of their houses, pitchforks in hands, ready to fight alongside the village warriors. But it's futile. The mothers, sons, and daughters fall next, slaughtered in their own homes. I'm still right here. The memory fades like a light being trapped in a shell. The breath exhumes from Bander's body, and the rage burns his spines. A shrieking shout, a demon's roar, a child's pain destroys the motion of the very air around the scarecrow. The field burns with boiling blood that pours from Bander's broken body, his limbs twisting into place and reshaping themselves, all the while gifting him with its agony. The cries grow louder. The energy surrounding the field grows sporadic and lethal. Wind spurs, dusting tornadoes that unravels the hay, holding the flesh and bones of Bander together. A final blast unshackles Bander as his resentment to the world is made clear. He falls and is detached from his form. But as the dust settles and the leaves fall, slowly he puts himself back together. Standing to his feet, finally able to move, Bander takes one last good look around at the carnage that lays in his wake. The buildings leveled, and the blood that remains from the local corpses creep into him, thickening his structure. He takes a step, and another. Unleashed and awake, alone and enraged, voiceless and unstable, Bander marches in his only direction. Forwards. No goal. Those who have cursed him are gone. No family. The world he once knew has been changed forever. No life, no way to fit into society with a face like that. As if his teenage life flashed before his eyes, and now adult Bander must knowledge himself on how to better survive in this world. And with his new appearance, it's a wonder if anyone will ever stick around. And that's it, the story of the Circus Macabre and every one part of it thus far. Now, this isn't the full scope of what everyone and everything stands for within the circus. It's more of a tale of how everyone came to meet each other and how the circus came to be. So in future episodes, I'll be following a similar format to this. I had a lot of great feedback from the first episode, with people telling me how well edited it was, and how funny it turned out to be, and I really appreciate it. I don't think anyone's ever going to truly realise how much just a small compliment on any of my project matters, but it seriously means the world. There is a possibility in the future that more episodes will follow a gameplay-focused format, but these narrative stories are so much better for explaining the world of Adoran in the V-Rising Roleplay, so definitely expect more of these. And until next time, take it easy.